Welcome to Abnormal, the podcast for normal people who want to do abnormal things. Today, I have the immense honour of welcoming a woman who shapes the magic behind one of the most awe-inspiring spectacles on earth, Cirque du Soleil. I'm joined by head coach Cherie Walker. Cherie, welcome to Abnormal. How's the intro? Was that pretty accurate? So one thing I'm super interested in, and the first question I would love to ask you is, your job is to coach people into doing things that most people think are impossible. And when you look at them, they don't seem humanly possible at all. So what's one thing that you look for in a performer which tells you that they have what it takes?
I guess we go through a diligent casting profile. So we have a casting team that's based in Las Vegas or in Montreal at our international headquarters. And they're actually the staff that will find the high-level acrobats that are required to perform on our stage. When we're looking for a new artist, we will tell them the specific requirements. It could be height, weight, skill set, experience. And then we get presented a list of artists. We'll go through different videos, and we're looking for not only the acrobatic skill, but also stage presence too. Once we choose a candidate, then we invite them on tour, or they start at our international headquarters and they go through some rigorous assessments with fitness evaluations, physical assessments from our physio team, and then they start their training process. So we're looking for determination, dedication, as well as the ability to do the high-level acrobatics, but come out of their shell and be also a character on stage.
How hard is that to judge from like videos and trials until they're actually on stage? Because some people, you know, the nature of performance is some people thrive in the limelight, some people go in their shell. So how hard is that to get from the
I think
stages?
it is difficult. It depends on the person and what experiences they've had before. At our international headquarters, they do what they call next generations or performance preparation programs, and they will specifically find acrobats or sports athletes, so gymnasts, trampolinists, to come in and start to learn about the performance world. So they'll do their acrobatic training, but then they do jeu, which is like clowning. They'll do dance classes. So they start to learn how to develop a character and get out of that comfort zone of portraying something that they aren't normally when they're an athlete.
Yeah, I imagine from an athlete's perspective, I mean, a lot of them are coming from professional backgrounds, whether that's, you know, gymnastics or Olympics and stuff like that. Like we had, this week's episode is actually going to be Kat, who you know very well, a high elite performer at Cirque du Soleil, and she was telling us all about her background in gymnastics. And so it doesn't really go hand in hand to sort of be able to, you know, clown around on stage and demand that. It's almost two different skill sets to be a performer versus physically be able to execute the movements and things. So do you have like examples as well that people you have on tour with you that are strictly performance based, and others that are more in that elite performance
we
category?
do. I guess each discipline is different. On Cruiser, we're quite lucky that our show is more dedicated to traditional circus. So people have come from 6th generation circus. So they've literally been born into a big top. So they've had that experience from day one of how to not only do the high level acrobatic skill and be the high level athletes that they are, but also learn how to portray the characters. Then we will have other athletes that come in. So Kat's a very good example. She started as an athlete, but she performed in multiple performance preparation programs and next gen sessions in Montreal, which is kind of breaking down the athlete and teaching them to do their acrobatic skill of what they're used to and competing at world championships, but then bring in the character. So switch off that athlete and not look like a gymnast on the stage, but start to look like whatever character they're having to portray.
Is that really difficult for some athletes? Like, you're the head coach, so how do you see that, and how do you see different personalities, different nationalities even take that role on? Because I'm trying to put my head in the mindset of an elite athlete, and some of them might be really comfortable executing the physical skill and then less comfortable when they have to finish and, pose and stuff like that. So what do you see from
Yeah,
a
it's
coach's
a mixed
perspective?
bag of who is here, but definitely some people are more confident in portraying the characters. We have a dance coach who also helps with character development too, and then our artistic director will do sessions with any artists that are struggling to find that ability to develop the character that they need to be on the stage. So yeah, it depends on who the person is and what they're shy about doing. Are they able to get out of their shell? Some people it takes longer, but we're able to get them there and portray what they need to be doing.
So I was very lucky. Last week, you and Kat invited my wife and I backstage to witness Cirque du Soleil, which is currently in Hong Kong. I'd seen it from the stands 3 weeks ago, which was insane. I've said that enough on the episode with Kat, so I'll try not to repeat myself here. And then to go behind the curtain with you guys last week was truly yeah, something I won't be forgetting for a long, long time. But when I walked in, there were so many things that took me by surprise and took me back. But there was one, you don't have to name names here, but there was someone that you were putting through their paces when I was behind the scenes. And can you help explain a bit what you were going through there? Because from my understanding, that was slightly, he wasn't performing on the night. So what were you doing with that performer, and what was that process you were
He's
going
a good
through?
example of a new artist that's coming into the show. So currently on a trial test period to see if he's going to actually be able to adapt to the discipline that we've hired him for. And he was in his third week when you came in. So from the first 2 weeks of assessments, we saw key areas that the athlete needed to work on, which was fitness and endurance to be able to work in the Wheel of Death. So that act is a 10-minute act of high intensity interval training when you look at it in a specific training program. And our wheel is quite big, it's quite heavy, and it's very different to other Wheel of Deaths that you see in other circuses. So where I was putting him through a program of interval training that had treadmill, so sprint intervals, sprint walk, then he'd do some skipping, like the skipping that they do on the actual equipment, some plyometrics, and then we'd repeat that. And it's just to try and build the stamina and the endurance so that when we go to the training on stage, we're more efficient without having fatigue.
And so that was maybe a unique case because he's on trial and he's coming in to an already established group. As the head coach, then, Cherie, how responsible are you for programming each of these athletes' day-to-day training with their disciplines, but also their health and fitness and their strength and
Yeah,
conditioning?
so it's a big job. We have 54 artists on tour. About 40 of them are specific acrobats, so athletes. I came from the sports world in Australia, and it's very different. You come in and you might have 10 athletes in one specific sports program, and you have a multitude of different sports science disciplines, coaches, and physiotherapists. Here on Cirque, it's different. You have one head coach, we have two physiotherapists, and that's a human performance team. We also have to flip the way when you look at periodization and planning, because in the athletics world or the sports world, you look at training blocks and you look at when your competition times are. Here, we're competing 7 to 10 shows a week. So I look at the shows as a competition, and then our training is actually in the reverse. Training is more like what the competition would be, because we have less training and time available on stage because we need to prepare for the show every night. So I had to change my understanding of how to work with elite level athletes and analyze it. So I observed a lot of the trainings, analyzed what was happening, and then slowly started implementing different projects and different programs for each of the groups. I work with the physio team, so we have two physios, and that's called our performance medicine. And then actually, Kat, who you met, we created a position for her as an artist coach for strength and conditioning. On Cirque, any show that have, or any acts that have usually 3 or more people, will find a captain, a leader within that group, and they'll become more specific, a technical coach for that discipline. And I oversee them, I educate the coaches, I use skill acquisition, I use sports science to help educate them in different ways of providing feedback or stages of learning. And then we all work together to develop different programs. So it kind of depends on the discipline. We have 10 different acts that we have to work with. Myself and the physio team will find different trends in what we're seeing and work on the key cases that we need to and develop programs from there.
Why is your performance team 3 people?
Good question. I think in the performance world, when you look at other entertainment or other circuses, musical theatre, we're actually quite lucky to have a coach that's permanent and to have a performance medicine team too. Most musical theatre, they won't have a coach and they won't have a physio. You hire people in locally. I've got friends in Australia that do that. They just go whichever city the show will travel to, they end up becoming the physiotherapist. So I think it's just different. We're trying to evolve to be a bit more in the sports science world, but then when we have to travel and move everyone, our teams can be quite small.
Hmm. And a bit about your background then. What talk us through about your background, but also in the sense of what qualifies you for dealing with these 10 acts. Like, I imagine they're very, very specific and technical, each act. So when you're giving feedback, I want to know, are you giving performance cue feedback? Like, are you telling them how to do the specific skill, or are you, coaching the leaders of each skill how to deliver feedback effectively to get the best out of their group? So talk us a bit. Well, first of all, let's go through your background, what qualifies you to do what you're doing, and then the sort of different types of feedback you're
So I
giving.
came heavily from sport. So I was a gymnast and did some diving as well at a younger age, but was injured quite early. So at the age of 16, I had to stop gymnastics because of some back injuries. And within a week, I had my coaching qualification because I knew that I wanted to stay involved in the sport, be around friends, and it was actually a really cool job to have while you're at school, not working at the supermarket or the checkout. So I was quite lucky to do that. So I started coaching quite young. And kept doing it throughout university. So I studied exercise and sports science at Sydney University. I added on an extra year and did my honours thesis in biomechanical analysis of springboard diving. So looking at the mechanics and physics of the springboard. And then I was offered to do my PhD. So I've actually done my PhD with diving. So looking at aerial mechanics for the springboard with multiple different athletes, looking at skill acquisition with that too. So motor control and learning. How does different stages or skill set, how does it change what they're doing in the air? And as well, how are they able to adapt to different things in the air too? And then looking at how easier dives, how that changes when we do a 1.5 somersault all the way to a 4.5 somersault. So I did a lot of research with the diving team. During that time, yeah.
So technically, you are very
Yeah.
qualified to
Yeah.
give feedback on sort of this, because I'm seeing like diving, gymnastics, acrobats. There's a lot of crossover, right? So like on the deep technical level, you are very qualified to
Yeah,
give
I think
feedback.
I've come from the science world. I'm a different coach for Cirque. So I came in a different pathway. Most of the coaches within Cirque have come from performing. They've either been on the stage of Cirque du Soleil or within other shows. So I came from sport, and back in 2017, I did an internship, a trainee program. So they invited me to travel for a month in North America, and I went to 3 different locations and learning from different senior coaches about how the company works, how the entertainment works, and just got to see how to apply my knowledge from the science side, the coaching side, from sport into the entertainment world. And then I was offered a position to come to Cirque du Soleil not long after that. So I think understanding how the body moves with human mechanics, with biomechanics, and then I've also worked as a skill acquisition specialist in acrobatics within the Olympic Institute in Sydney, in Australia. Those principles can be used here because all of our artists are professional. They should be hired being able to do the skill. We shouldn't be teaching people how to do a skill here. Um, so they should come in with the level of, we have a high level of expectation. We have an act that comes to us ready to go. And then it's more looking at fine tuning, increasing difficulty, because I always like to keep stimulating the artist as well. So seeing what else we can do. So yes, there's technical advice there, but most of it is learnt before they come to Cirque.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything then how do I phrase this? So physically, performance wise, okay, that's ticked off. When I was backstage with you guys, I noticed a few things. One thing is there's so many different cultures and nationalities within the group, which, first of all, from an outsider's perspective, is amazing. Like, it was so cool being backstage, listening to all these different languages, communicate in different ways, just everyone preparing in really different ways for the act that they were about to do. How much of your job is focused on the group dynamics and the culture and making sure that the culture is right, and versus just, as we're talking about, the physical cues, the actual execution of the performance? How much do you have to focus on the
I think
culture of
that's
the
one of the
group?
big roles that we have is understanding the different dynamics and where people have come from as well, because people have different perception on how life is. And we are one big family here. I think we have over 25 different nationalities, which I think is really cool. It's one of the coolest parts of the
Wow.
job is that you get to learn different things from different ways of living. But for me, it's all about trust. So it's building the trust with each of the individuals and each of the groups to then be able to have an influence on their different training programs. Um, of course, they can be dynamic things. It's a family. It's always going to be like that, but it's resolved within a few minutes. So we never have any issues with that. I think Google Translate can be one of my biggest biggest winners. We're trying to, if you have someone that's speaking Russian or Spanish that isn't necessarily the artist coach that had very good English, but you want to have a side conversation with someone, Google Translate is really helpful. We've got so many tools to be able to do that, but our language is meant to, it's English. So I'm lucky that I'm an English speaking person, so I didn't have to learn another language. A lot of people come in and they're here for a while and then they start to learn English knowing that that's how we communicate with everybody.
What's the largest demographic nationality
Probably
in the group?
Russian, Eastern European, because of our big teeterboard number that we have. So there's 19 people that are a part of that act. Kat's in that act, so she's from Belgium, and Talita, she's from Brazil, but the rest are Belarusian or Russian. And then we have a big Spanish cohort as well. So the main languages spoken within the artist group is Russian or Spanish. Yeah, English
English
is
is
the
the default
default.
when
Yes.
they're coming into the group.
They do communicate with each other in their own languages. And then if they need to speak to someone
Hmm.
that doesn't speak that language, they'll then translate into English for them. Um, and for me, I pick up words. So I can understand Russian and Spanish in terms of acrobatics. So I know what's going on. And most people use it. Yeah,
Very
all the bad
niche.
words. Most people know, like they demonstrate with their body language too. So even if I don't necessarily understand all the exact words, I know what's going on.
Yeah. Culturally, then, can you give us a few ways, a few techniques maybe that you've used over the years from your experience, blending these different nationalities together and making sure that the culture of the group is strong? Give us a couple ways that you've done that to make sure that it's always at a certain level, and when things slip, it goes back to square one again. What are some of the tricks of the trade that you
For me,
use
it
for
ultimately
building
comes to
culture?
trust. That's the big thing. So I know when I was first coming into Cirque, there was concerns being a female and having to work with big Russian troops, and I kind of laughed at it. I never even thought about that. I had a Russian coach when I was a gymnast, and everyone is the same. We're all human beings. So to me, it's developing the relationships, developing the trust, and then if you set that as a leader, then people start to do that as well. It's creating that culture of not being shy to go talk to your leader. And if I didn't build the trust, then I wouldn't have people that may be shy to come talk to me or speak up about something. Then that wouldn't happen, and we wouldn't have everybody being able to come together and work together. So I think it's clear communication, um, getting people out of their comfort zone, getting myself out of my comfort zone to deal with different nationalities. We had an Ethiopian group come in, which I thought was really cool. And I just sit and chat to them and understand where they've come from, how they got to Cirque, how they ended up in Kusa, and understand their background. And then that kind of breaks the barrier, breaks the like nervousness of, okay, this is my coach, I need to impress them. Well, you're already here, so it means you've already impressed us. So it's trying to break down those barriers so you can have that laugh. And then when you need to have the tough conversations, it's much easier.
How do you build trust with
Oh,
the
I
athletes?
think it depends. It's individual. I think it's proving yourself as well. So for me, coming from my background and not coming from the performance world is something that I knew that is different for Cirque, that I haven't been on stage before. And I had to prove that I knew what I was doing and that I could have an influence here. Um, I know with the sports science side of things, I was slowly trickle feeding information there. I wasn't going to come in and change the world. You can't do that with a new group, especially that have come from a different way of performing. You come from not doing strength and conditioning. You don't really warm up properly. You go on stage and you do 5 somersaults in the air, and it's you walk in, and you go, okay, wow, these guys are very, very talented, but don't necessarily have the the background behind them. Um, so it was just slowly making those influences there. And then I think that builds the trust. I've seen other people where they've come in and they said, you have to do this, you have to do that. And then everyone steps back and says, well, I don't want to do that. And then you have like the fight or flight. But if you slowly introduce things and provide educations, listen to feedback from the artists themselves, saying that, example is DOMS. A lot of them didn't really understand what DOMS was. I'm too sore, I can't perform the next day. So actually realizing that, they, sorry, yeah,
For the listeners, Cherry, DOMS, delayed onset
yes.
of muscle soreness. So when you train or go to the gym and then your muscles are sore for 1 to 2 to
So
three
some of
days
them didn't
after.
understand what DOMS was, and I had to literally say, sorry, what you just said as well, is sit down and explain that to the group that were presenting the concerns to me and not wanting to do strength and conditioning to actually improve their performance and prevent injuries. So once we slowly started to educate them, then we had the buy-in. And also listening to them, well, when are they getting DOMS? Okay, I'll change when we're going to do the strength programs to the night after. So we say we finish on a Sunday, let's do a heavy strength and conditioning session after the show. So then you have 2 days to recover. So working with them, it should be a two-way street.
Yeah. It must be amazing, but also really tricky at the same time when you're dealing with literally the world's best athletes. A lot of them you could categorically say that some of them are up there with the world's best athletes, right? Because when you're dealing with people at that level, they've obviously done something right to get to where they are. And I'd imagine they're pretty reluctant to change large chunks of their routine and life. Versus, when you're working with beginners, like if we were to work together and you were to teach me how to balance beam or something, I would cling on to every single word that you said because I'm an open book, right? So, have you found any challenges then because they're at such a high level and you're at such a high level as a coach? Has there ever been any friction there when you're trying to deliver this feedback and actually coach these
I think
performers?
that can happen in anywhere. Even in the world of sport, you can have athletes saying, "No, I'm going to do it this way." Um, but it's never, for me, honestly, it hasn't been that bad. I think people are here to listen. There might be pushback, but it's more, I think I see it as a way of there's pushback because there's not necessarily the same understanding as what I have. So if you explain why you're trying to change something or provide advice or look at a technical cue, it's okay, this is the reason why we're looking at it this way. Um, there's also, I guess, complacency that can come from people that have done elite sport, gone to worlds, gone to Olympics, and now they're in the performance world. It's I don't know if I really want to be doing all the training that I used to do because I have to perform 7 to 10 shows. And those shows are over 2 hours long, sometimes 3 times a day. So then there's the fatigue factor too. So I need to understand where everybody is in their mental fatigue and physical fatigue too, because if I push too much, then that's going to increase the levels of fatigue as well. So for me, it's understanding where everybody's at too. There might be pushback because there is mental and physical fatigue there, and having those conversations then to understand why we're in this situation, then resolves whatever's going on.
How much influence do you have outside of the show? So when they're not in camp or under the big top and they're back at the hotel or they're on their days off and post show, maybe, how much influence do you have in
Post
those
show
moments?
depends on the discipline. Some will have trainings after the show, and that's guided by myself or the performance medicine team. Different those key groups from the trends that we find within our stats that we have. They might have prescribed programs. But in their free time, we allow them to have free time. If there needs to be certain certain artists that need programs, then we'll give them programs. But those 2 days are crucial to recovery, if it's mental, if it's physical.
But is it like so you have a triple day on Sundays and then Monday and Tuesday off? Like if the artists or I don't know
Yeah,
what to
we
call
call
them,
them
artists,
artists. Yeah.
performance athletes, like okay, if the artists want to go out drinking on Sunday night, is that allowed in Cirque du Soleil?
People can do what they, yes. So, yes, people can socialize. Honestly, it was a different thing to what I'm used to with sport. I came from I came from a
What are you
program
used
in the
to?
time when I was managing an Australian team that it was dry, so no drinking on the in the competition period. To coming here and it's different, but sometimes the social side of things, it's good for people just to go out and have a bit of fun, and I think that's why we're all here as well. We love to travel, we love to explore the world, we love to see different venues and do different things and experience different things. For me, I don't look at what's going on outside unless I need to. If people come ready and prepare and physically able and mentally working, then there's no concerns.
I guess the difference with the athletes you might have worked with before is that the Cirque du Soleil's competition time is in like 3 4 month blocks. So it's a long time to not do any of that, especially when you might be discovering a new city for the very first time. And as you say, part of the attraction, I imagine, of being part of Cirque du Soleil is that you do get to live that life where you travel city to city and some of the best cities in the world. Um, so, yeah, I guess trusting that they turn up ready to perform is maybe the best default to have until intervention
Yeah,
is
and also
necessary.
throughout the time, we educate, we provide different workshops if we need to. But yes, trust until something needs to happen.
And then let's talk about the show then. Obviously it's mind blowing what you guys do and what you've coached, and it's just silly, some of it. Um, have you ever had to say to the artists, um, no, this is too dangerous. We can't do this.
Yeah,
Pull back.
all the time. Yeah, we do that a lot. That's one of my main roles is looking at risk mitigation. And it's an assessment I need to do on a daily basis. We have we have many protocols within Cirque of what we follow, and it's quite easy to follow those. For me, it's not hard to say, okay, this trick is not going in the show tonight, and the artists actually respect that because sometimes they don't want to be the one that says that because they feel, I guess, like a sense of guilty or not pride. And
Mhm.
I'm very confident to say, okay, it's not ready to go in tonight. We'll continue training and it will go into the show when it's ready.
Will it just be a training thing then that you'll look for? So if you deem them physically not ready to execute the skill on the night, or are there other things around the show that could play a factor into whether you say yes or no?
Training mainly is one of the things. So if we're developing a skill or we're bringing someone new in, we'll assess it in training. And once it's ready in training, we do what we call a show conditions. So the artist will be training on stage and just what we call like a work training. So not the show lights, not in costume, in training clothes. Once they're ready, we start to add all the elements. So we call it in skill acquisition, all the constraints. So we're adding the environmental constraints by adding the show lights, sound, music, the band. Then we're adding costume as well. And then we add the choreography too. So we call that a full show conditions. Once the artist has ticked that, then they're clear to be able to perform their full act or certain elements of their act that we're increasing the difficulty of, then we can put them into the show.
Is it mainly the artists who have a higher appetite for risk? Are they normally the ones pushing to go further to do more, or is it other people within the group?
Artists, of course, they're professional. What they do, they're here for a reason. They want to try and keep pushing the boundaries, but also it comes from me too. I try and find a way of motivating people so that they don't become, I guess, bored or complacent in their act. So keep giving them stimulus because we have the best in the world, so we want to keep them around. Someone taught me that Cirque is like a sandbox approach. So let people play, let people experiment, because if we don't allow that, then then maybe they don't want to be here anymore. So we got to keep them engaged. Unicycle is a really good example. They put in there's a moment where the girl does a handstand on the porter's head. That used to be 2 hands. Now it's 1 hand. So it's, okay, what's next? So I try and stimulate them and push them, obviously push them in a way that I know that they can achieve it as well, just to give them some goals to reach towards.
And then in terms of a percentage, this is going to be really hard for you to give, I think. But when I'm looking at some of the acts, right, give some context to this. Listen, when I'm looking at some of the acts, for me, it seems highly likely that some of them are going to fail because they look so risky. Like when they're, one example, I forgot what that one's called, where they've got the string and the thing in the middle.
Highway?
What's that called? Where they've got the thing and the one person has the string like that, and then they're throwing the thing up, catching it.
Yeah.
The Diablo, that's what it's called, right? So that is not, it doesn't seem like the highest degree of danger. However, there's a moment where he's swinging it so close to the audience, and I'm thinking at any point that Diablo could slip and smack someone in the audience and take their head off. That's one example. Then you've obviously got the high wire, you've got the rings of death. Like there's so many things. Can you give a percentage on how likely things are to mess up in a show?
That's a hard one. For me, it should be 0 because that's what we work towards. Like honestly, that's what we're working towards. That's what the ideal plan is. So most of the artists can do harder tricks. We don't necessarily put the hardest tricks in the show because we think about, okay, we need to do 7 to 10 shows a week. What is sustainable? What is easy to perform in their vocabulary? We have people that can do much harder things, but we don't put it into the show knowing that we need consistency and stability.
Do you ever target shows where you're like, okay, this one we can go all out. We can let the performer, let the artist off the hook. Let's pull out all the stops here.
Yeah, it
Let's
depends.
Go high risk.
Most of the time, our show's quite stable. We keep it fairly similar, consistent across all shows. Other shows that I've worked on, we did have acts where they were able to do harder tricks at a consistent level. You'd call it on a premiere, we might add an extra trick in as well. But most of the time, we aim to keep the stability and the consistency. It's to keep the artist in a better mindset to, I guess, reduce the stress levels or the adrenaline.
It's crazy that you call Kuza, which is your show, stable. It's like the least stable thing I've ever seen in my whole life. It's insane. Okay, one question. I asked Kat this as well on the podcast. And I'm going to ask you because I think you might have a similar idea to Kat as well. So for myself, okay, now you've seen me in the flesh. You've seen I'm an average-ish guy. I used to be a professional rugby player, so I consider myself relatively athletic. Obviously, I got humbled as soon as I came backstage at Cirque du Soleil. However, if you gave me like I was in your hands for 1 year full-time at Cirque du Soleil, what is the one act that you think I'd have the highest chance of success on after that 1 year period?
What did Kat say? No, you're not going to tell me.
She said
really?
none.
It was Hulu.
No. I'll tell you after.
Something where you need to be running. I think coming from rugby, you're going to be strong. You're going to have a good center of base and stability. Did you play rugby sevens or rugby? Which rugby did you play? Okay.
I did both.
Yeah.
I did union professionally, but sevens was
So you
part
got
of
good
that in
cardio.
summers.
So maybe you could do like a pusher for the wheel of death, or you could walk on the high wire.
What's a pusher for the wheel of death? Is that the
person that
that's
stays
going
more
round?
inside the cage and they're making the other person fly in the air?
Okay. Now we're aligned. That's what I said to Kat. I said even though it looks the scariest, and I'm sure it's petrifying when you're on stage, when I'm looking at the others, I'm like, right, no chance doing the gymnastics one or the guy on the chairs where he's balancing and all that sort of stuff. Some of the coordination ones, I'm like, not a chance. With the ribbons flying in the air, and when I'm looking at the wheel of death, I'm like, right, give me a year.
Maybe 5.
Give me a year. Maybe 5 years. That's exactly what Kat said as well. Now, obviously, this is not me saying that I think I'm able to do it. I want to know which one is the quickest to learn in terms of like skill acquisition, and almost like which ones take a lifetime to learn and are truly impossible. So if I wanted to start and dedicate my whole life to this, which acts would you tell me you've got 0% chance of ever being able to do that?
Starting now, most of them, all of them. But all
Yeah.
the artists started when they're young. Yeah,
That would have
yeah.
been my answer
So
as well.
you look at
That would
our
have been my
teeterboard
answer.
artists like Kat or any of the artists that are jumping in the air. They came from some form of acrobatic sport. So sports acrobatic, trampolining, tumbling, some gymnastics, some diving, which started at a very young age. Some people start at 5 years old learning how to do basic gymnastics, acrobatics to then start to progress to the level they are. Contortion, they start at a very young age, same, probably 5 years old as well, learning how to move their body in the ways that most of us see impossible to be able to do. The high wire guys, they're born into the circus. So they start as probably as soon as they can start walking. Um, William Diablo, he 6-time world champion before he came to Cirque. So it kind of shows the level. So when you're talking about him like throwing it over the audience, it looks really scary. That's probably one of the easiest things he does. Um, so the level of skill and discipline they've all had in their younger years is the same as what you'd think of an Olympic gymnast, an Olympic diver, any sport that requires you to start in the early specialization.
Yeah, I mean it's obvious when you actually watch the show how much time and effort has been dedicated to each one of these individual acts. But most impressively, in my opinion, is how all of these individuals come together to put on this spectacle. And as you mentioned at the start, the performance side of it as well is truly something to behold. Like you could put these guys and girls on TV and they wouldn't look out of place. They look like true performers. Back to the group then, the culture of the group. Have you ever had any kind of like bad eggs in the group that you've had to kick out or have some serious words with because they were, almost toxic to the group
Not
culture?
not too bad, to be honest. Like everyone is good. Everyone is here to work and here for a reason. Um, and we all have to come together. That is one of the messages that we deliver on a daily basis or a weekly basis. When someone new comes into the show as well, we explain that too. Especially when they're being integrated into an act where English might be their primary language, but the group's language might not be. So it's talking about how to try and be involved with the groups, how to integrate themselves within the groups, but also to come talk to us if they're having any concerns about that. Like I said, we're a big family. So of course there's always brother and sister bickering, but it's resolved really quickly and it's not hard to resolve that.
What's the most rewarding part of what you do as head
I think all
coach?
of it, but I think for us, even though we're behind the scenes, seeing the gratitude and hearing the applause from the audience on a nightly show basis shows that all that hard effort, all the hours, everything we've done to lead up to that show that day, is being enjoyed. And for me, I think that's one of the big things, but also the success. So it's the little things for me as well. We added one little thing into the show and I saw the artists enjoy it more and be out there, come off stage with a smile too. Um, there's many things. I think seeing disciplines change their mindset, like we were talking about. So from the slow drip feeding of education, then me not having to actually go in there and tell people to do stuff. I've been able to really step back now and watch people grow and flourish and take the different tools that we've given. And for me, that's a big success is that I can step back and go, okay, the working machine is going, and then find what the next project will be.
It's got a relative degree of irony as a coach where you've done your job well when you're kind of no longer needed in certain
Yeah,
groups.
yeah, and that's it's an interesting thing to deal
But
with.
obviously you
Yeah.
can't say that to the
No, but then
organization.
but it shows the work you've done, and it's like, okay, the next group I can move on to. But it is interesting. It's something that I'm learning as a professional how to be okay with that because I'm used to working, working, working. Now I can step back and observe and just step in and give little bits of feedback on information when I need to.
And in terms of the lifestyle then, how do you enjoy the
Love it.
life on the road?
Yeah, I really love it. So my
Yeah.
husband's on tour as well. So he actually got a full-time job when we restarted after the pandemic. He comes from the hospitality world. He owns, well, he used to own cafes in Australia. And when I joined tour, he was kind of coming back and forth. And then after the pandemic, he was able to join on tour permanently and was offered a role in our kitchen here, which makes it so much nicer. We both love to travel. Um, and seeing the world for me is one of the best things. Like I would be traveling as much as I could, even if I was at a stable job, but this you get to do it while you're working. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, when you gave us the tour the other night, when my wife and I were walking home, we both said we're like, wow, it must make such a difference if your life is on tour. So your partner, your wife, your husband, whoever is on tour with you, it must make such a difference to how much you get to enjoy not just your job, but the actual places you're visiting as well, because everything's a shared
Yeah, yeah,
experience
we're
there.
very lucky. We have family members, so we call them OAMs, accompanying family members, and can get work within the tour as well. That's actually how James, my husband, started. So the company opens up to allow people to come in and sort of step in, try different things, get your foot in the door. And we have many kids on tour as well, which you may have seen. I think at the end of the show, you saw some of our high wire kids, so you can see how young they were. They're starting to train
Yeah,
too.
saw that.
They train handstands, they train on the trampoline. So we open our doors to allow the families to feel
That's
welcome
crazy.
too. Because if the artists are happy, because we can promote to have families here, the family environment, then it keeps the performance happy and it keeps them enjoying what they do. And then we don't lose these expert artists.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I don't have to tell you this, but in a big organization, and especially like a sports team or in a high performing group, how many little things go into it, and your job. It's not really about the strength and conditioning programs and all that stuff. You're dealing with the world's best athletes. It's those tiny, not even 1%ers, like 0.1%ers that are going to make them tick longer term, and really add to that kind of ecosystem of the whole group. It's such a huge undertaking. How long do you think you've got this in you? This
I
this
love
this
it.
type of
So I
work?
don't see an end at the moment. I really love the show. I really love touring. We both love touring. So I'll keep going until that changes. But I think I've definitely got some time within me.
I was amazed to see how, I don't want to seem ageist here, how old some of the acts were, some of the performers. Because before I was chatting with Kat, I just in my head I assumed when I was seeing people like leap around stage that everyone would be like in their 20s and their physical peaks. But then obviously you've got so many different parts to play. And I think it was one of the Highline guys was 63. He said it was
Yeah.
his 64th birthday in a couple of weeks' time. It was
Yeah, this show definitely
insane.
has the older demographic. When I joined the show, a lot of them were older than me. So I was like, okay, this will be even more interesting too, like a younger female coach coming in, but it was fine. I think everyone here in that age group has taught me a lot. That, back in when I was a kid doing gymnastics, like, okay, at 18, you have to stop because that's just what you do. But the world of sport and the world of this style of sport of acrobatics is changing. The concept of, okay, there's conditioning, there's functional training, there's injury prevention training now. The science of human movement is really impacting people's length of career. And Vicente, who you met, who's 63 years old, every day if I'm tired, I come in and he will just be a ball of energy running around. And I'm like, okay, I have no excuse because these guys are still out there
Wow,
performing, loving life.
that's
And
amazing.
it's great. I do have to spend more time with the older generation, the older artists here about looking after their bodies. So, implementing functional programs to keep them strong if they want to keep doing this, because a lot of people do want to keep doing this. We have 5 artists from the creation on this show still, and that was created in 2006. So they've been doing this for a very, very, very long time, nearly 20 years. So it's also keeping their mind active and motivated as well.
And final question then. I'm very aware that you've got another big performance day today. So I appreciate your time. As you know, the podcast is called Abnormal, and I ask the same question to any guest that comes on the show. Um, for those people out there wanting to do something abnormal in their lives, doesn't have to be working on Cirque du Soleil or even being a professional athlete, just something subjectively abnormal, what's the one piece of advice you
Don't
would
give
give
up.
them?
For me, it's you find your goal, you find your dream, you put your head down and you can do it. I come from a background like that. I didn't necessarily do that well in my high school exams to go straight to university. I found my different pathway. So you have the peak of the mountain and it might take different pathways to get there. But if you know what you want, you can prove to yourself that you can do it.
Cherie, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for, well, first of all, thank you for bringing
Of
us
course.
behind the scenes last week to give us the best possible context for this conversation. And thank you for giving up the time to come on the podcast and give your
Thank you for
insights.
having
Really
me.
appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Abnormal. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to the channel and give us a 5-star review in whatever podcast platform you are listening or watching on right now, as it goes a long way to help growing the show. Thank you, and see you in the next one.